My mother secretly tried to put my newborn son up for adoption behind my back. She believed the baby would take attention away from my sister's wedding, which she saw as the most important event of the year. Instead of supporting me during this important time, she went to extreme lengths to keep the spotlight on the celebration. When I discovered the truth, I was in shock. I couldn't believe my own mother would do such a thing. I immediately filed a lawsuit against her for trying to take my child from me. I gave birth to my son 3 weeks ago. I was 28. My husband's name was Michael, and we lived in a small house on the outskirts of Omaha. My life finally felt complete. A long-awaited child, a reliable partner by my side, quiet happiness. But the moment I held my son for the first time, a shadow crept into that picture, one I had been secretly expecting. My mother, a woman who had only ever cared about one daughter, the younger one, Amanda. Dad had passed away 2 years earlier from cancer, and on his deathbed, I had promised him I would look after Mom. Back then, I believed I could keep that promise, no matter how much it would cost me. But now, it was becoming clear that promise was the heaviest burden I would ever carry. My pregnancy started long before Amanda got engaged to her boyfriend. At the time, I was already 6 months along. Logic would say that by the time her wedding happened, my child would already be born and there would be no conflict. But not for my mother. After hearing about Amanda's engagement, she literally stormed into my house. I remember that day too vividly. I was standing at the sink washing baby bottles when she burst into the kitchen, her face twisted with worry. "You have to do something about your condition," she said, as if it were something shameful. I froze, not immediately understanding what she meant. She believed my pregnancy would steal the spotlight from her perfect little girl's wedding. I tried to calmly explain that no one would even notice me because Amanda and I hadn't spoken for years, and I wasn't even invited to her wedding. But that wasn't enough for Mom. She wanted me to hide my pregnancy and my child from everyone. Family, friends, even neighbors. "You'll ruin her moment," she hissed at me as she stormed out. I was too stunned to argue. Deep down, I knew no matter what choice I made, I would always be wrong in her eyes. After that scene, I cut contact with her. It was painful, and it went against everything I had promised my father. But I had no strength left to fight. I was pregnant, vulnerable, and I had to think about my baby. Mom didn't show up at the hospital, didn't visit, didn't even call. It was Michael and his parents who stepped in, and for the first time, I understood what real family felt like. I thought the worst was behind me. But just a few days ago, my phone exploded with messages. Mom was demanding I answer her. I held out as long as I could. Finally, I gave in. And the moment I heard her trembling voice, I knew something terrible had happened. I just had no idea how terrible it truly was. When I finally answered, her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. She wasn't calling to apologize or make things right. She was calling because she got caught. Through sobs, she admitted she had tried to put my son up for adoption behind my back. I couldn't breathe. Mom had contacted an adoption agency, lied that Michael and I were court-declared unfit drug addicts, and forged documents claiming she had legal custody. She built an entire false narrative to take my child away. And she almost succeeded. Almost. Only the attentiveness of one agency worker saved my son from being taken forever. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She kept crying, rambling that she got scared, that she hadn't meant any harm, that she never thought it would go this far, that she only wanted Amanda to have her wedding without the shadow of my pregnancy. But all her excuses sounded hollow and disgusting. I hung up without saying a word. That night, I sat in the kitchen staring at the wall. Michael tried to comfort me, but I was numb. Something inside me had snapped. I thought I was prepared for her betrayals, but nothing could have prepared me for this. The next morning, the agency officially confirmed everything. Legally, her actions qualified as fraud and forgery. The agency had already reported her to the police. They asked if I would cooperate with the investigation. I knew I had no choice. I had to protect my son. Michael and I met with a lawyer. He told us immediately that this was serious. Besides the criminal case, we could file a civil lawsuit for emotional and financial damages. We decided to move forward. Mom had destroyed everything herself. Her messages kept coming. Pleading, threatening, begging. She brought up the promise I made to Dad, tried to guilt-trip me, twisted the memory of him to manipulate me. But I saw it differently now. I wasn't breaking my promise. I was protecting my child. And if that meant going to war with my own mother, so be it. I was terrified, hurting, but I knew I wasn't backing down. Not ever. The legal process started almost immediately. Michael and I filed a civil lawsuit while also supporting the criminal case initiated by the agency. At the same time, Mom was under house arrest but allowed to use her phone, and it turned into an endless stream of messages. She begged me to drop the charges, promised to change, cried, accused me of betrayal. One moment she would invoke Dad's memory, the next she would curse me for destroying the family. It was hard to read, but I learned not to react. My guilt toward my father came alive with every attempt Mom made to reach me, but my son in my arms reminded me what mattered. A week later, we were called for the first meeting with Mom's lawyer. I expected apologies or at least some attempt to soften the situation, but instead, her representative tried to paint me as an ungrateful daughter seeking revenge for years of neglect. I was shaking with anger. No remorse, no acknowledgement of guilt, just pathetic attempts to twist everything upside down. I left that meeting more convinced than ever that I was doing the right thing. There would be no peace. Meanwhile, the pressure from family started. My uncle, Mom's brother, reached out, trying to persuade me to drop the lawsuit. He said the amount we were asking for was unfair, that Mom raised me and deserved forgiveness. I held back as long as I could. But when he hinted that I was ruining the whole family out of resentment, I snapped. I reminded him that Mom had tried to steal my child, and if he cared so much, he could pay the entire amount himself and take her in. That ended the conversation. After that, my sister Amanda joined the war. She started spreading rumors that I was destroying our family out of jealousy, that I had always envied her, and now finally found a way to get back at her. When I found out, I sat down on the kitchen floor and laughed hysterically. It was so predictable. The family I had spent years trying to be good enough for didn't even try to understand me. I was alone against everyone, but I had no more doubts. I had to see this through, for my son, for myself, for the part of me that stayed silent for too long. I wasn't going to endure it anymore. The attacks didn't stop. Amanda took it further, showing up at my doorstep one evening, pounding on the door and screaming accusations. I didn't open. I stood inside, holding my son close, listening to her call me every name she could think of. She shouted that I had ruined everything, that Mom couldn't pay for her wedding anymore because of me, that I had destroyed the family out of spite. I could hear neighbors opening their windows, peeking out to watch the drama unfold. I didn't care. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. When it became clear she wasn't going to leave, I called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived and started escorting her away. She fought them, yelling threats at me, saying things so disgusting about me and my child that it made my skin crawl. One officer quietly suggested I consider filing for a restraining order, and I knew he was right. After they left, I called Michael, and he came home early. I told him everything Amanda had screamed, every threat, every disgusting word. We both agreed we needed to act. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about our son. That night, we decided we would move. A fresh start. A place where Amanda or anyone else couldn't show up and poison our lives. I would change my number, delete social media, cut off everyone who had chosen sides against us. It hurt to think about, but it had to be done. Safety came first. The next morning, I began researching places to move, checking schools, hospitals, everything. Michael reached out to a realtor friend, and we started planning. I didn't sleep much those nights, the anxiety pressing down on my chest, but there was also relief mixed in. I wasn't running away out of fear. I was protecting what mattered. For the first time in a long time, I was making decisions without trying to appease anyone. Not Mom, not Amanda, not anyone who thought I owed them something just because we shared blood. I owed everything to the little boy sleeping peacefully in the next room. I was done feeling guilty for choosing him over people who never truly chose me. The move happened faster than we expected. Michael's friend found us a small house on the outskirts of another town. Quiet, private, with enough space to feel safe. We packed quickly, only taking what we truly needed. Everything else felt tainted, heavy with memories we didn't want to carry. The day we left, I didn't tell anyone. No goodbyes, no announcements, just silence. I watched the city disappear through the car window and felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was something quieter. Steadier. Peace, maybe. The house was nothing fancy, but it felt like ours. I started fresh. New phone, no forwarding address, and a restraining order against Amanda. Granted without resistance once the court saw the police report. Days blurred as we unpacked, took turns holding the baby, and figured out what normal could look like. Then one evening, a cousin I hadn't heard from in years sent me a message. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. It was a screenshot of Amanda's social media post. She had publicly distanced herself from our mother, claiming she'd only recently found out what had happened and that she did not condone it. She even wrote that our mother deserved the consequences. I almost laughed. Just months ago, she was screaming on my porch about how I'd ruined everything. Now she was trying to look clean, probably under pressure from her fiancé's family. Apparently, they had threatened to delay the wedding because of all the drama. So Amanda did what she always did, threw someone else under the bus to save herself. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything. That was the surprising part. I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the message and blocked the number. I didn't need closure. I didn't want her apology. I just wanted my peace. And for once, I finally had it. Weeks passed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, life began to feel normal. We developed routines. Early mornings with the baby, quiet dinners, late-night talks on the couch. There was still tension under the surface, but it no longer consumed me. Then the call came. The court date for Mom's criminal trial had been set. I was listed as a witness, along with several employees from the adoption agency. The prosecutor's office briefed me on what to expect. I would need to testify. I agreed without hesitation. I was nervous, yes, but there was no fear left in me, just determination. The trial moved quickly. Mom's lawyer tried every angle. claimed mental instability, family pressure, emotional breakdown. But the evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, false statements, recorded calls. The judge saw through the performance. In the end, she was found guilty on all charges. She avoided jail time due to her clean record and her age, but she was fined heavily, compensation owed to me and to the agency, and sentenced to mandatory counseling and community service. I found out through the court clerk. She never contacted me again, and I didn't expect her to. I didn't want her apologies. I didn't care if she hated me. I felt no victory, no joy, just quiet relief. Justice, maybe. Not the kind that fixes what was broken, but the kind that draws a line and says, no more. After the trial, Michael and I finally used the settlement money. We put every cent into a savings account for our son. It wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming something that was taken. We had earned our peace, and I was done explaining that to anyone. I stopped checking social media, stopped replying to extended family. If they cared, they would have stood by me when it mattered. I wasn't holding space for people who only showed up after the storm had passed. I didn't expect to feel so exhausted after everything was over. The trial was behind us, the money was in the bank, and Amanda was out of our lives. Yet I carried a strange heaviness everywhere I went. Trauma doesn't just disappear when the crisis ends. It lingers in your bones, in your breath, in the way you flinch when your phone rings. I found myself checking the locks twice at night, pausing before opening emails, expecting something to go wrong, but nothing did. Days turned into weeks. Our son started smiling more, holding his head up, reacting to our voices. I'd catch Michael watching us from across the room with a look I hadn't seen on his face in a long time. Ease. One day, he suggested we visit his grandparents. I hesitated. They lived 2 hours away, and traveling with the baby was exhausting. But I agreed. That weekend, we drove out to their small home tucked between wide fields and old oak trees. His grandparents were warm and steady, the kind of people who made you feel safe just by existing. We sat outside with lemonade while they held the baby and told stories. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been wound until I felt my shoulders drop for the first time in months. At one point, I told them everything. About Mom, the trial, the fallout. I even confessed that I felt guilty for breaking my promise to my dad. His grandmother looked at me and said, "Sometimes the best way to honor someone is by protecting what they would have loved." I didn't cry. Not then. But something inside me shifted. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in ages. I woke up without panic, without dread. Just silence, soft and calm. Maybe healing doesn't come all at once. Maybe it arrives slowly, in safe places, in quiet moments, in kind words that don't demand anything in return. We moved again a few weeks later, not out of fear this time, but out of choice. A better neighborhood, closer to Michael's work, with a park down the street and good schools nearby.